Hello guys, and welcome to this new video. So we will watch today the first round of the FIDE World Chess Cup in Baku. So I decided to pick up some upsets and games between really high-rated players and lower-rated players. So we are starting with the game between Archer Ssegwani from Uganda against Giri. So Archer Ssegwani is 2357 and Giri just came second. I think he tied for the second place or third place in the FIDE Cup with 8 draws and just a win. And so he starts this World Cup against a player rated under 2400s, and he hopes, of course, to win a game. So e4, c5, knight f3, d6, d4, pawn takes, d4, knight takes, d4, a6. So Anish is deciding to play the knight off, c4. So we'll have a hedgehog pawn structure. So it's a Maroxy for the moment, and it's turning into the hedgehog. I'm just moving a bit further. So those pawns like that are called the hedgehog, and here let's go a couple moves away. Okay, so black wants to play either d5 or b5 to kind of open up their position. Their pieces are going to play if they do that. They can also target the pawn c4 and e4. White will try to keep control of all the central squares, make sure black doesn't push those pawns. And maybe, well, now he cannot do that anymore, but sometimes you want to play f4 and just try to take more spaces, bring your rooks in the center and start attacking those two pawns. So black wants to push d6 or b6, and white wants to attack those two pawns and make sure they are not pushing. There are also sometimes some crazy plans with, I remember something I seen Nakamura play, like king h1, rook g1 and g4, g5. So when you get total control of the game with white, you have some, I mean, a lot of possibilities, but it's not that easy to do. So black plays rook a7. So black is playing on only 3 ranks, but I mean, rook a7 with the idea to go rook c7 and add a pressure on c4 now that the bishop leaves is a really decent idea. So white plays a4, is well, taking control of the b5 square, rook c7 and queen b3. So here it's a novelty. There are just a couple of games with the move a5 here. Game continued with pawn takes and queen e2. Maybe it made more sense, but queen b3 is playable as it was done in the game. What I don't really like is that this pawn on c4 now, oh, didn't want to take that. This pawn on c4 now is really weak. I mean, the knight is coming to e5, the bishop to b7, the queen to c8, and the move b3 is not available anymore. So it's really hard to defend everybody here. Let's continue a bit further. So rook fd1, bishop b7, knight de2, and queen to c8. So white is wants to go knight g3 to protect the pawn and bishop e2, but he's just a bit too slow, and he has no time to protect both pawns, as after knight g3 black is already taking the pawn on c4. He doesn't have time to bring the bishop to e2. Just to come back, if white goes here bishop e2, he's just losing the pawn on e4. So basically white here is already losing a pawn after 13 moves, so a bad start for the Ugandan player. So knight de2, queen c8. Here white goes knight g3. He could have tried to play bishop b6, knight b6, queen b6, knight d7, queen e3, and rook takes c4. Black winning back the pawn he lost on b6 and really getting an advantage here as he has the bishop pair, and now the bishop comes to f6, maybe the queen to c7, the rook to b8, and I mean this is pretty weak. A lot of good squares for the black pieces, so black is doing better here. So he went knight g3, protecting the pawn. Now he wants to go bishop e2. Black goes rook takes c4, rook d c1, pawn to h6, prophylactical move. So black here basically is really just a pawn up. Bishop b6, pawn to d5. So taking some more ground now. So giving back the pawn, but black activity here is so strong. Bishop e3, pawn to d4, making a fork. Knight c e2, rook c1, bishop c1, getting away of the attack. If he played rook takes c1 here, black could have gone, so he attacks the queen. Black could have gone knight to c5, attacking the queen and keeping the attack on the bishop. So he has to go bishop c1, knight c5, queen a3. So it's equal materially now, but black has such a strong pawn on d4, just 3 square away from queening. White pieces are really clumsy. Look at that, those knights, this bishop on c1, this rook on a1, nothing really moved. While black is really having some harmony, showing all the arrows, everything is working together. So black has a very good advantage. It's minus 120 on Houdini. So e5, trading up pieces, knight e8, knight f4, trying to get the pieces working together for white. So those two moves were really good. e5 and knight f4 made sense somehow. If bishop takes f3, queen takes f3, the queen comes back to the game, and maybe he wants to organize some attack on the king side. Queen c7. Black is adding pressure to the pawn on e5. Pretty hard to defend it. Bishop takes b7, knight takes b7. And now basically you cannot really defend your pawn. I mean, earlier or later you are going to lose that one. It's impossible to keep it. It's too far away and it's too hard to defend with this pawn also coming. So queen f3, knight a5, straightening maybe knight c4 and knight takes e5. Bishop d2, knight c4. So here, after the remove rook c1 to pin the knight, black can simply play knight takes d2, rook c7, and knight takes f3 with a check. So when you take back, losing the rook. So he cannot do that. He goes queen e2, knight d2, queen d2, and queen takes e5. So Anish is really dominating the game. Now he has a pawn up, so he finally won the pawn, and he has this monster on d4. White, in exchange of the pawn he lost on e5, could trade up some pieces and get the pieces working together. Though, I mean, 450 points in the rating behind, playing against a top 5 player in such a position. I would personally be just desperate with white, and I think I would just blow up the game pretty quickly. Well, I love to fight, but I mean, this is looking really desperate. Though Archer Ssegwani is fighting, knight d3, threatening the queen, queen d5, rook c1. So now he has the blocker on d3. Maybe after e5 he can go e3 to block the e4 square as well. And he seized the open file. Though this pawn on a4 is a bit weak, and the one on b2 might be weak as well. So, I mean, the knight is protecting it, but those pawns, those queen side pawns are weak, and Anish could maybe seize a second one. He goes a5, fixing the pawn structure. Queen c2, bishop d6, developing the bishop on a better diagonal. Queen c4, queen to a8. So he protects the pawn, and he's watching with the long range, so probably wants to soon contest the c file. So after queen takes d4 here, black just plays bishop g3 and attacks the queen, so white can take the pawn. He goes pawn to f3. So as I said, he wants to take control of the e4 square, maybe bring the knight. And here Anish is starting to make mistakes. He plays the move bishop g3, while queen b8 would have made a lot more sense, because you attack the pawn on b2 and you put pressure on this long diagonal and on the knight on g3 and the pawn on h2. The best move here would be queen to b5, queen takes b5, pawn takes b5, and rook b8. So I mean, it's an endgame with a pawn up for black. I mean, a good advantage. Could have follow up like that the game. Also, maybe here you can play bishop g3 as well, so you have choice. Though he went bishop take g3, pawn take g3, knight d6. So, I mean, he's still a pawn up, and the pawn structure is pretty bad for white. But somehow white has some counterplay now, because the queen on a8 is not ideally placed. So queen c6, offering to trade queens. The Ugandan player believes he has chances in the endgame, because if you trade queens here, so take, this knight on d3 is a really strong piece, controlling a lot of important square. So you can maybe bring the king to protect it and start to harass the a5 pawn. So it's not that easy to win the endgame. So Anish goes queen b8. Archer Ssegwani continues to thread the queens. He wants to thread those. Here the best move for black was rook c8, queen takes, king f2, and pawn to e5. Here with the tempo he wins. Black has more time to organize f5, e4. I mean, you know, in chess, tempi are really important. So could have gone to the endgame with this tempo up and be able to put up pressure. He went knight f5 instead, pawn to g4. Here white could have taken the pawn, but went pawn to g4, knight e3. Again, we could take the pawn, but he decides to go king f2, knight to d5, but it's a Zeitnot, so that's the move played. Queen b8, rook b8, and rook c4. Now it's almost the same endgame as the last one we saw. Just white is a tempo up, and the knight is slightly misplaced. So white can play here rook c4, pawn to e5, and rook to c5. That's the difference why I said the knight is slightly misplaced. Is that now white is attacking on the 5th rank, knight b4, forcing the knight exchange. And now suddenly if white plays the move b3, it's totally equalish. Black takes the pawn, rook takes a5, and white is going to win back its pawn. So it's amazing how white played. It means like nothing really happened, nothing special happened, but white move by move just outplayed. I mean, Ssegwani just outplayed Anish Giri for about 10 moves in a very tough position with the pawn down. It's pretty amazing. It's like he was a grandmaster playing against a FIDE master. It's pretty amazing what just happened. I mean, he just misses the move b3. But if we watch the position from 15 moves ago, just showing it to you, from somehow this point, let's go from here. From here, white to play. So moves 29, just a pawn down. To move 43, from here. It's pretty amazing in 15 moves, what white achieved. I mean, just equalized. If you just watch the two positions, you would really believe the grandmaster is playing with the white pieces. Though he misses the move b3, he plays rook takes c5, rook takes a4, rook d5, and the thing now is that you have to be a pawn down. Rook a2. So now you don't want to take this pawn because he takes on b2. It's more important for you, so king g3, to get the a5 pawn, because it's easier to win back the pawn on d4 because the king and the rook can connect. So this is a good decision. Here pawn to g5, so trying to take the squares away from the king. pawn to b3. Now white realizes what he has to do. Rook a3, king to f2. So with this move b3, it allowed the king to come back toward the d4 pawn. King g7, king e2, king g6, rook king d2. Rook takes b3, because now the idea is king c2 and rook d4. Rook takes a5, and now we'll trade this pawn against this pawn. Rook b2, king d3, rook g2, rook a6, king g7, and king takes d4. And this is a dead drawn endgame, because it's 3 pawns against 2 pawns in a rook endgame. This is drawn, but you still have to achieve this one. It's not that easy. So Anish is cutting the king away, but the king is too close, because as soon as you will go to attack the pawn, the king is coming back. So it's not doing anything. Ssegwani is keeping the rook on the 6th rank, stopping the king. So that's the move placed. For the moment, the players are not doing anything. Giri is just waiting. He hopes that Ssegwani will make a mistake just by, playing nonsense move, but he's just moving calmly, you see. He's just moving his rook one way or another, back and forth. So now the king goes further. Rook's a6, attacking the pawn. So we keep an eye on the pawn. Black cannot do anything. So white is just simply waiting, as you see. Just moving, moving, moving. Nothing happens. Now the rook goes away from the e5. The kings come on e4. The rooks come back. The king comes back on d4. Absolutely nothing is happening. Black is just waiting. This is a good strategy. Just to wait and hope for mistakes. So the king moves. The rook goes to f4. It doesn't change anything. White is waiting. Finally, black is trading pawns to try to get some more activity, but it doesn't change anything. Now it's 2 against 1. So again, the rook on the 6th rank, attacking the pawn. Just to make sure the king is not coming forward. This is really the thing you have to do here, is not let black plays king f5, rook a3, and king f4. This is the only plan black could have, but if you just don't move like that, as white is doing, keeping the rook on the 6th file, on the 6th rank, it can't happen, because as soon as the king leaves, you just take the pawn. So it's just waiting for the pawn to move up, keeping the rook b6, rook a6. Okay, now black is getting the rook on the 6th rank, but it doesn't change anything now. White anytime can make the check, coming back on the 6th rank. So again, white is calmly defending, not doing anything, just moving back and forth. Now black is pushing the pawn. So the idea might be now to bring this king to e5, play the rook to b3 and play the move g4. That might be a plan, or play the move f4 and try to bring the king to f5 and play g4. Nothing is really working, but you are trying just another setup. So black stopping the king. Again, you should never trade the rook in those positions, because as soon as the rook are off, the 2 against 1 is almost always winning. For the pawn endgames with 2 against 1 are almost always winning for the side that is a pawn up. So you just go away. Just moving away. Rook a5 now, controlling the 5th rank. Give a check. King g2. So now a little trap maybe if you give a check. King d5, rook f6, king e5, rook c6, and pawn to g4. So you cannot keep checking. You go king g2, going away from the pin. So here, rook b5, f4. So black is going for those ideas. Maybe he wants some rook d2, rook f2 at some point. But white is keeping the rook on the 5th rank. Now that the pawn are pushed, we can also come with the checks from behind. So rook b8. Okay, give a check. Now rook d8 would be losing because of king e3. But of course, the white player knows that. So now he's stopping the king, he's cutting the king from the e file. So rook e5 attacking the pawn on g5, rook d2. Now if you take king e3 and rook a5, I'm not sure what's the problem here. Maybe rook d3, and he's afraid to get to a bad Philidor position, because after king f3, rook a3, and this is the Philidor position. It's really easy to draw, but after rook d3, maybe it can turn out to be a bit tricky, or maybe rook f2 also could be tricky. So he rightly doesn't take the pawn, he just waits. It's easier not to make a mistake just by cutting the king, because nothing can happen really. So he's just waiting. So now black is going backward and helping the king to come back. So white is going away, and now white is going for the g5 pawn. So king h3, give a check, and king g4. A maneuver that might have been a bit risky, but he probably just calculated everything is good. So now if king f7 or king h7, you just take the pawn, and this is just drawn. So king f6, rook f8, king g6, rook g8, king f6, rook f8, king g7, rook f5, straightening the pawn, rook g1 check, and king h5. And now the king cannot come close to the pawn anymore. So go rook g3, attacking the pawn himself. Rook takes g5 check, rook f6. This is the last trap. Now if you take the rook, pawn takes, and this is going to a queen. But Ssegwani doesn't fall to the trap. Rook a5, rook takes f3, king g4 now, attacking the rook and the pawn. Rook f1, rook f5 check. This is the fork. King e6, rook takes f4, rook takes f4, and king takes f4. And this is a crazy upset by white, because it's not like he was lucky at some point, or I mean, it's like Giri did, just blunder something. I mean, with white, after the opening, he was absolutely, he was -1 on the computer. He was in a really bad position. So I mean, he didn't outplay his opponent in the opening. He didn't have some luck in the opening. It was just absolutely worse after the opening. So it was like big advantage for Giri. Then in the mid game, he just totally outplayed Giri. It just played much better. And in the end game, he just could defend pretty convincingly this 3 against 2. I mean, it's not too hard, but you must be under a lot of pressure against one of the best players in the world, and he just showed some cold blood and did the easy draw. So I'm really amazed by this player and by this game, and I really wanted to show this game to you. So amazing game. I mean, if you're listening to this video, Archer, I mean, just hat off from me. Amazing game. Really hope you can put up a fight on the second one with black, even if I know it will be really hard. But I will be following your game, and I really hope you can make an upset. It would be really amazing. So let's go to the next game. I will go quicker through the next game. Just want to show 3 games today. Some upsets, taking advantage of the fact that higher rated players play against lower rated players. And here we get a game again between Michael Adams, which is a really well-known British player. He's a former top 5 player, and he's playing against Maria Muzichuk, which won the World Cup, the Women's World Cup, a few months ago. So I followed the game closely because I was interested to see how Maria would be performing in the mixed World Cup. So we have a real Lopez. I don't want to spend too long, so I'm going to go quickly through the opening. So this is still theoretical. Nothing new under the sun. Knight bd2, queen d7, rook e1. Still a well-known theoretical position. Knight takes d2, and here Michael Adams plays bishop takes d2, It could have gone queen takes d2, which is a more classical way to play. So bishop d2, rook a d8, so following the path of a game that was played. Knight d4, knight d4, pawn d4, pawn c5. So I think we're still in the preparation of the black player. Pawn takes d5, bishop c5, rook c1, and rook c8. I just want to show you that Maria is playing against one of the best players in the world still, Michael Adams. And she just equalized pretty easily in the opening with the black pieces, very well prepared. So the pawn on d5 is isolated, but the difference between this pawn on d5 and the classical Isolani is that with the Isolani, the pawn will be on e3. So it would be just an isolated pawn, but here this pawn on d5 is an isolated passed pawn. And this changes a lot. It means that we can push it easily. I mean, we should take care, it's not going to be taken, but I mean, we can push it. It's not a long-term Isolani, like it's just stuck. It's not stuck at all here on d5. It can be pushed, and this is changing a lot of things. Here, white could have followed, by example, by rook c5, take, and bishop b4, which would have bring just an equalish position. Didn't go with that. Maybe white has some very microscopic advantage. Maybe some rook e2 might be played. Trying to play rook d2, rook d4, but this is microscopic. Not even sure white has an advantage at all. He went pawn to h3. So stopping the bishop going to g4. Pawn d4, pushing the pawn. Queen f3, pawn d3. Still pushing the pawn, and it's not easy to take it. So when you can go with the pawn so far in the opponent position and you can keep it, it becomes a very strong weapon. Also, white can never play bishop e6 because of pawn takes e6, and the pawn on f2 is really under a lot of pressure. So rook e1 is trying to put pressure on the pawn on d3. Bishop d4. Attacking e5 and b2, rook c8, bishop e6, queen e6, pawn b3, saving the pawn, queen e5, and queen d3. And so after 24 moves, Muzichuk just got, I mean, it's just not a dead drawn position, but a totally equalish position. Queen f6, bishop e3, queen e3, pawn to h6. So it's almost symmetrical. The only difference is the a6, b5 against a3, b3, but with so few pieces on the board, it doesn't change much. Pawn to g3, trying to expand g3, h4. Rook c2, a4, take, rook a2. Having a look at the pawn. Rook c1, rook a1. Just trading off all the pieces. So Moria is trying to get the game very dry, and now it is. So it's if you play a5, it's just going to be almost symmetrical. Just the queens would be in different squares. So it's of course drawish. Nobody can do anything, and Michael Adams has to agree for the draw. So why did I show this game is just because black just made a very good impression to me, just making the draw against the 2750 FIDE rated players looked very easy with the black pieces, and this is really a good result for the Women World Cup champion. I really will look also closely to the next game, because it looked so easy for black today. I mean, what will happen tomorrow when she has the white pieces? I mean, anything can happen in this match. The difference is not as big as between Ssegwani and Giri. It's only 250 points different, and maybe we can see a big upset in this first round in this match between Adams and Muzichuk. And the last game I will show you is, I mean, we are well inside the game between Gelfand, a former winner of the FIDE World Chess Cup. He's playing against Cristobal Enriquez Villagra. And he has a very good advantage. As you see, Gelfand has the 2 bishops against the 2 knights, and this pawn on c6 is clearly a weakness. So rook b c7, so black is defending fiercely its pawn. Rook a1, so we're just on the 40 moves. It just moved 40 now, so we're out of the Zeitnot. So rook a1 coming to the a file, knight b6, running the rook, rook c5, knight bd7, rook c5. We'll see a lot of scrambling in this game with the knight, knight e5. So now the knight is coming to attack the bishop, bishop e2. So the white bishops are a bit backward, but they might jump anytime on better squares. Pawn to c5, rook a6, rook c6, pawn to f4, trying to expand the king side for Gelfand. Knight d7, bishop c4, threading the queen, rook a6, rook a6, queen e8. So threaded a pair of rook, it makes things more easier for white. Rook a7. So now adding a pressure on this f7 pawn. The queen might come as well to add a pressure. So white is really looking good. The only problem is that he cannot push a4, e4, e5 for the moment. If he could play those 2 moves, it would be game over. Rook d8, king h2, getting the king on a safer square. Queen e7, queen b3. So a lot of pins and attack on the diagonals. King f8, queen b7. So the knight is really pinned, can't move. Rook b8, queen c6, rook b6, rook a8 check. Queen f3 was more precise, so it went rook a8 check in the game, but queen f3, rook d6, and bishop c3 was more precise because bishop takes f6 was coming next. By example, not playing the best move, the idea with white would be to attack this knight 3 times and just to win this piece. So it would be an idea. That's not the ideal play for black, but I'm just showing how white should have continued. That he went after rook b6, rook a8 check, knight e8, queen f3. So I mean, just even if the knight looks glimpsy on e8, it would be better just to add up as much pressure as we can on this knight. The white is still much better. I mean, it doesn't really matter that white lost a couple of tempo in this position, as he still retains a lot of pressure with the 2 bishops. I mean, it's a very long-term advantage for white. So I mean, even if you miss one win, most probably it will appear again later on in the game, and that's probably what Gelfand thought. Though here, rook a7 was a big blunder, and I give you 10 seconds to find how Cristobal Enriquez Villagra could have continued here with black. 10 seconds from now, what he could have done. So you can pause the video. And he missed knight to e5, threatening the queen and the rook. Now if you play rook e7, it's met by knight takes f3 check, pawn takes f3, and king e7, so you lose an exchange. And the best continuation is pawn take, because you cannot defend the rook with your queen, and queen takes a7. And now black would just be an exchange up. So this was a very big blunder by Gelfand. Lucky that Enriquez Cristobal didn't see it. So that's just how the game could have continued. But black is now having I mean, it's not absolutely winning, but it's a good advantage because he's now an exchange up. Though he missed that one. He missed this knight e5 blow. He played knight d6, bishop d5, sorry. Knight b5, threatening the rook now. Rook a5, knight to f6. You see those 2 knights are dancing the salsa around the white piece. It's not that easy to play. Knight c7. So now the salsa is coming to e6 or to d5. bishop c3, bishop taking, going to the long diagonal, knight e6, bishop e5, threatening the rook, rook c8, bishop b7, threatening the rook again, rook d8, bishop a6, knight g5. You see, dancing again around. You cannot take it because he takes the bishop, queen c6. So white is still going for the first plan, which is to win the c5 pawn and then maybe trade up a bishop against knight to make things easier. Knight e4, protecting the pawn, bishop e2. Now we want to play bishop f3 and get the knight tangled to each other. So if you move one knight, you lose the other one. That's the plan with the bishops, is that one bishop attacks a knight and the other bishop attacks the other one, and then you can really start turning around with the other pieces. So he's almost achieving that. Queen d7, queen b6, knight d5, so he's getting away, queen b3. So now we are keeping a lot of squares. Maybe one day the group comes back to a7 and we have a lot of pressure on f7. You see always the idea with the f7 pawn. Pawn to f6, the pawn is going away. Bishop d2, queen f7, queen c7, rook to b5. So now we finally want to enter the 7 rank back. Knight to d2, queen a3, attacking the pawn 2 times. So we are really getting things done rightly with white now. Queen e7, rook takes c5, finally won the pawn. Knight b1, queen to a5, attacking the rook and the knight, and knight takes e3. And here when white finally achieved a lot, the players agreed for a draw. And if anyone knows any information about this game, please write me in the comments, because I don't understand what's happening here, why white is giving a draw. The computer is giving plus 5.50 for white. He could have just played your rook to c1, attacking the knight, and you cannot go knight d2, you cannot go away because of bishop a3, and the queen is gone. So after rook c1, black cannot save the day, and the computer is giving at the best move, queen d6, rook b1, queen takes f4, and king h1, and white is just a piece up now, and just absolutely winning. So it's another very strange upset here. Black missed this 95 move here a lot earlier in the game, so it was a blunder by white and by black because it's missed. And here, the biggest blunder, if we don't get any other information, is to agree for a draw here for Gelfand when you are just a move away from winning a piece. A very strange game, and waiting for more infos, but if it's just a draw on the grid with no special reasons, it's the very big upset, not winning a game. Agreeing for a draw when you are just a move away from winning a piece. So thank you for watching this video. Don't forget that you can like it and share it. Want also to say we had an upset in the game of Grichuk against Nayem. I don't remember the name. Grichuk could not win with the white pieces, so he drawn against a guy with rating like 2420. So this is of course a big upset as well. That's the only other 2,700 players that missed a win against a weaker player. Also, Moreko Sandro has beaten Niwa. So Niwa, the Chinese player, 2,704, lost against Mareko, 2,599, and Perez Ponsa, rated 2,563, beats Dominguez Perez Liner, 2,732, with the white pieces. So that was the two other upsets. When I meant 2,700 plus rated players, I meant the big names, because Giri, Gelfand, Grichuk, and Adams are all of them are top 10 former players or even top 10 players if we talk about Giri and Giri. So thank you for watching this first round. See you for the revanche in the second round tomorrow. Thank you for watching the video. Goodbye.